Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host. We have another Chargers football game in a few short days. Excited to dive into that game against the Rams preseason week 2 with my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing well. I'm energized. Surprisingly, last year after my first day or a couple of days of teaching in my first year, I was exhausted. Now I'm energized, man. I'm a veteran.
Now you know what to expect. You're in a routine. You know your classroom, all that stuff. It definitely makes a big difference. So, we're two educators on here. We always appreciate anybody in education that gets back to the swing of things. I know my wife is anxiously awaiting the start of the school year for them on Monday. So, again, if you know an educator, send them some good vibes this week. All right. Well, we have a lot to cover today. A lot of news. We did our show on Tuesday, and there wasn't like a ton of news. Obviously, there was the Jordan McFadden bit with Ben Mason, but the Chargers have made some more signings, and the quarterback situation, I think, is a lot more positive on social media today, with Justin Herbert officially not in a walking boot today. The Chargers' initial statement when he was injured was that it would be 2 weeks. It has been 2 weeks exactly on the dot today, and he is not in a boot. He did not practice today, so that part has not started. But I think it's obviously great news that Jim Harbaugh said publicly that he is on track. He is not in a walking boot. Seems like he's doing well. So progress is progress, and obviously fantastic news when it comes to our franchise quarterback.
Yeah, heck yeah. It's very, very positive news. Is it technically anything new or unexpected? No, but it's nice to see that it's not unexpected. And the fact that it is basically like 2 weeks, it'll be 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks. For it to just be that is great, because we speculated. They just mentioned it was the plantar fascia, but we didn't know, like, what was it torn? Did he step on a rusty nail? Like, I don't know. We didn't really know, and we still don't know. But he's back and he's out of this boot. It doesn't mean, of course, he's going to be out there and running with the football and doing all this crazy stuff. But it's nice to know that if they expected him to be ready for the regular season, he's currently on track and he will be out there against the Raiders, because I can't stand being surrounded by that many Raiders fans, and it would stink if it were a different quarterback out there.
Yeah, and I think if Easton Stick, again, I think we're a little bit higher on him than the rest of the fan base, but if Easton Stick or Luis Perez or Tyler Huntley, for that matter, is starting week 1, I think the excitement for the season would start on a much slower note, obviously. So great news regarding Justin Herbert. Obviously, there was a lot of concern when the injury came out about him missing time and potentially having to deal with this injury through the bulk of the season. Adam Schefter went on the Hall of Fame game and was like, yeah, this is going to go on for the whole season. So we don't know. I think my advice to every Chargers fan this year regarding injuries is don't pay attention because this regime is not going to be, saying anything concrete when it comes to injuries. And Jim Harbaugh has stated that we just don't know. Like, they're not going to tell us. And it's very different than most NFL teams, and I'm curious if this continues throughout the regular season, because injuries affect betting markets. They affect over-unders. They affect, point spreads, everything like that. Yeah. Mental health of fans, yes, obviously. But a lot of money that the NFL makes is, influenced by who's playing and who's not. So I'm curious if that sticks or not throughout the season. But for now, like, we just don't know. Like, people are messaging me about Bradley Bozeman missing practice, Joey Wilson missing practice. Nobody knows. Like, we have no clue what is going on unless they come out and say something. So as long as Justin Herbert, they're publicly saying he is on track, I am inclined to believe them. And if they say somebody's going to be out for 2 weeks, I am inclined to believe that timeline is going to hold up. And we literally got exactly 2 weeks from the injury today. So exciting news for Justin Herbert. Hopefully he can get back into practice sometime soon, to try and make up some of this lost time with some of these receivers. But obviously very, very good news today.
Yes, as Joey points out, he was working through something. Come on, guys. Yes, everyone's working through something.
What is that picture?
What is it? Oh. Right. We'll just leave it up.
My gosh.
Anyway, to our super chat. Our super chat says, when it's Justin Herbert, I panic. Am I wrong? No, you are not wrong. It's certainly more panicky. Congratulations, Joey. You are in Vegas. Vegas goes on your YouTube profile picture. I think that's the hey, man, that's awesome.
Oh, dude. The the adjacent nature of the two profile pictures of the most recent comments on here, a Vegas trip and some flowers, is just fantastic. But no, when it comes to Justin Herbert, I think panic is fine, NSN, because that is the season, right? You know, if Justin gets injured, you know, that's the season in the tank, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So again, we'll see what happens when it comes to practice. He did not practice today. He wasn't working off to the side. He was in the weight room still with Ben Herbert. So next week, Herbert watch will continue, if you will, and he will hopefully, you know, be able to throw in some practices here soon.
Yeah. Quickly from Joseph Levine. Sounds like Jason Levine's burner. I get the feeling most of the injuries are not serious. I think Harbaugh was being candid when he spoke about taking an abundance of caution. Yeah, I mean, so far it's definitely lived up to that. It seems more cautious, and I'm okay with that. As long as they're cautious and it's all under control, seems fine. It's a long list. It can be frustrating for sure, but I think once week 1 hits, it won't be such a list. I hope. And so far, if Justin Herbert's injury was not super complicated and doesn't seem like it was, great. But it's at least nice to see that they put a timeline out and nothing was unexpected here. I feel like with Brandon Staley, there were so many different times where they did not actually have all the information, or like, oh, we'll let Kenneth Murray's injury, like, okay, it'll work itself out. Oops, he needs surgery. JC Jackson's doing okay. Oh, oops, he needs surgery. You know, so many different players, something happens and then it's a bit more unexpected. This one, it's not complicated, I don't think, but still it's nice to know that they were like, yep, 2 weeks, it's been 2 weeks, done. Like that is, it feels like a very Harbaugh thing. Like, yep, I mean what I said, and I said what I meant. And now Herbert is going to be close to 100%. I rhymed. Let's go.
Nice job. Nice job. Getting ready for those middle schoolers next week. Yeah.
That's what I do in class.
Right. I kind of do prefer like the not knowing thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm just saying that because I'm so used to the way that Kyle Whittingham handles injuries, because he never says anything about injuries unless it's like a season ender. So I guess it is kind of refreshing to not have like the dread of, oh, okay, like this player hasn't practiced in 3 weeks, like what's going on, versus just like, I don't know, he's working through something. So it's some give and take. But when it comes to injuries, I just don't know enough information. Like people freaking out about Bradley Bozeman, like he could be sick, he could be dealing with some minor knee soreness, he could be getting a vet day off. Like we don't know until they say something publicly. So that is my advice there. All right. In terms of the other quarterback news of the day, Jim Harbaugh revealed that Easton Stick will start in week 2 of the preseason. Jim Harbaugh said earlier, or was it right after the game, that they would let practice decide who was going to start the next preseason game. If we take Jim Harbaugh at his word, as we just experienced, you have to trust that Easton Stick earned the right to start this week over Luis Perez. Now, some of that could be that Luis has been in the playbook for 10 days now, and Easton Stick has had a full offseason. But Luis Perez also has not really distanced himself either. I think he's distanced himself from Max Duggan, but he hasn't really made a dent, at least from what I've read. We have not been there. But from what we've read, Luis Perez has struggled. Easton Stick has struggled as well, but it's not like Luis is going out here and practicing amazingly and, you know, stealing this job away either.
Yeah. So the practice thing, I have to take Harbaugh's word for it here. I have not seen it. I was a little perplexed and stunned to see that Easton Stick did not convert a single third down in 8 separate attempts, apparently, and 11 on 11s the other practice.
Yep.
So I don't know if that means that Luis Perez was even worse, which technically you can't get worse than 0, but through the whole body of work through the week, or if it's just like what you said, Luis Perez just does not know the full playbook right now and he cannot run more than a handful of plays. I don't know that they're going to call more than a handful of plays, but if they don't feel comfortable, they don't feel comfortable. The good news is he's surpassed Max Duggan, which means he is making progress. Like, they do see something in him. He's now going to make the roster as that third quarterback, it seems, or at least he's in contention to just be that third guy. But yeah, we're curious to see if one more week allows him to finally catch up, especially if Easton Stick has a really bad game this week.
Yeah, I think if Easton plays poorly again, I think then we will see Luis Perez get more snaps next week. But we'll have to wait and see. We're all hoping that it's much better than last week. Jim Harbaugh did say all three quarterbacks are going to play. I think an ideal situation, is the offense with Easton Stick gets some actual drives in, and you can play him the first quarter and a half, and then Luis Perez comes in halfway through the second quarter, plays the whole third quarter, and then Max Duggan runs quarterback power for the whole fourth quarter.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, it'd make it interesting.
Yeah. Run that clock out, baby. Let's get out of there.
Get us out of there. Yep. Early day.
All right. Tyler, any other thoughts on the quarterback situation of the day so far?
The news, not so much. Yay for Herbert. Backup quarterback's cool. For me, that's just, let's see how it plays out on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree there. All right. The other big news of the day, which I thought potentially could be the only big news of the day, literally and figuratively, I guess. The Chargers have signed defensive tackle Teair Tart. I think that's how you say his first name. Formerly of the Tennessee Titans, Houston Texans, and briefly the Miami Dolphins this season. This is a guy who we can dive into a lot of the specifics here, but you and I have spoke a lot about the concern in the defensive tackle room, and this isn't like a needle mover, right? Like, I don't think this takes them to an elite kind of position room, but this is a guy who potentially start for you, play both of the couple of positions for you. And I think ultimately, this is Joe Ortiz staying true to his word that he's just going to constantly turn over this roster to try and get better as much as he can at positions of weakness. And I think this is a prime example of it.
I love the addition. I don't know where or how much he's going to end up playing. Of course, on the one hand, if you sign him in March, he'd probably be you'd think, okay, that's your Puna Ford starter role or whatever it is.
Yeah.
With so late, and considering how much we've now seen them really speak highly of this interior defensive line, not really sure where he's going to be, because he's not starting over Puna. He's not starting over Morgan Fox. I don't know if he'd start over Otito. I'd like to see more of Otito. So, where does he kind of fit in? And my other question, of course, is, do they keep 5 or do they keep 6 interior defensive linemen?
Yeah.
If 5, who's the guy that's in trouble? If 6, then you're keeping 6, and, Hinton doesn't make the roster, and that's, cut and clean there. But I am very curious, especially because earlier, though it's been a while now, I mean, Harbaugh flat out said that Eboigbe is fighting for that 5th spot, that they were going to have a 5th spot, and they had 4 guys that were solidified, including Matlock and Otito, and that 5th spot was up for grabs. So hopefully that doesn't mean anything about Justin Eboigbe, and hopefully not a health thing either. But Tart, the signing, I get it. I appreciate it. You've seen quite a bit of training camp. You saw it live. You pay attention to the offensive line. Of course, when you're paying attention to the offensive line, you watch the defensive line. And you were very concerned about the defensive line in many moments. You've spoken, not very negatively. You've had reservations about Scott Matlock and some of the backups of this defensive line. And I think it did show up in the first preseason game. I don't know how good the Seahawks interior offensive line was, but after the first few series, it did not feel like the defensive line was holding like it was earlier in the game. So bringing Tart in seems great. I want to see him hit Devontae Adams specifically so we can make a Pop-Tart joke. I think that would be the absolute perfect confluence of great ideas.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that happens. But I'm cool with the signing. I don't know. How much stock do you put into the reports about attitude or effort? And that's the reason why he was released from the Titans last year.
So from the Titans, it definitely was a concern. I reached out to Justin Mello, who covers the Titans and does some great work for the Draft Network, and he is comfortable with me saying this, but him and Mike Vrabel did not get along, in part because Tart thinks that he should be or he should have been viewed at a similar level of Jeffrey Simmons in terms of his role. So he felt like he should have been one of the guys and not subbing in and out and not being taken out of pass rush opportunities. You know, Mike Vrabel essentially viewed him as like a run defender who can occasionally rush the passer, and that Tart viewed himself as an every down dominant kind of player next to Jeffrey Simmons. That was like his vision. And so apparently there was a lot of clashing over that just led to kind of a falling out. It was kind of a toxic situation. I can't speak really on what happened in Miami. Publicly, the Dolphins are saying that they thought it was not a scheme fit. You know, Mike McDaniel did also mention that Tart has a lot of ambition, and that ambition wasn't, you know, conducive towards their specific roster. So there is some aspect of here where this guy thinks very highly of himself, and he thinks that he should be getting snaps and recognition of an elite caliber player. Does that actually is that actually warranted? Probably not, but I do think in 2022, he showed that he was a defensive tackle on the rise. If you look at Pro Football Focus's wins above replacement metric, he was 28th in the league. In that specific metric, he was 22nd in overall grade. He had a top 10 run stop percentage number. He had a top 10 run pass rush grade. Like, this is a guy who legitimately seemed like he was on the rise before the 2023 season. Mm-hmm. So this is, to me, a bet on Jim Harbaugh, Mike Elston, Jesse Minter, and this veteran defensive line group, including Bud Dupree, who we played with in Tennessee, reining this guy's, you know, mental state in and allowing him to come in and flourish. And if that happens, to me, if Tart is locked in, he's the best defensive lineman on this team. Like, most talented defensive lineman on this team. And like, I don't even think it is really that close. But if you're having more of these kind of issues, then I don't know if he even like plays over Scott Matlock or Justin Boygby. Like, I think there's some legit danger that this doesn't pan out at all. But if you believe in the Chargers ecosystem enough, I think this has the chance to really pan out in a way that is, you know, compensatory pick future, big contract future. Like, this guy has a ton of talent from what I've studied, you know, him, and he made Corey Linsley look bad a few times last year, unfortunately. So this guy is tremendously talented. I think he has a ton of upside. It's just a matter of if this ecosystem can get him to buy in. And everybody has said that, like, everybody is buying into the Jim Harbaugh effect. So maybe this is a guy who can come in and have a huge impact on the season.
I think he absolutely could. I'm curious how much he might have even been in touch with Christian Fulton, who's having
I forgot
appears
about that
to be a potential career resurgence. I mean, he Fulton flat out said, I was not put in the best position to succeed. The coaching didn't work for me, so I wanted to find something else. Maybe you say that on the way out, and a lot of players do say that. Who knows if it holds up, but he's looked great in camp, obviously. Tart's got to be locked in here. You mentioned, you know, for the Chargers, it's great for them, the compensatory pick aspect. Obviously, if he plays well, that's good for them too. Tart, just looking at his position, and he'll be, I think, 28, you know, next year. If you just look at like his Wikipedia page or the teams that he's been on, you know, you go to the Titans, you have one good year, and then you're this attitude, potential, you know, whatever out there. Then you get released, then you get picked up by the Texans. They don't keep you around. You go to the Dolphins. They don't keep you around because there's not like a scheme fit for whatever reason. Like, it has to work for him this year with the Chargers. Like, he has to try to figure out a way to make it work because he's not like a former first round quarterback. Like, that's it. So he has to make it work. So I fully buy that the attitude issue is not going to be an issue here. At least it shouldn't be, because this might be it for him. So I'm all for it. The Chargers can now line up 3 players over 300 pounds and just say, you know, run at us if you'd like. So I like that the Chargers have one more veteran defensive lineman who, like you said, if all things work out, he's the best overall defensive lineman on the team. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think they needed this kind of player who can do both and can control the line of scrimmage, rush the passer. You know, I think Puna, we're betting a lot on him returning back to like who he was in 2019, 2020. But this was, not so long ago that Teair Tart was that kind of player. So I'm excited for it. I think this defensive line room had, a lot of room to grow. And I don't know if Jesse Minter was like looking at this defensive line room thinking, because if you're Jesse Minter right now, you feel great. They probably feel great about the cornerback room. With AJ Finley's emergence, you probably feel great about the safety room. Don Henley has taken a tremendous leap forward. Junior Colson is coming back, so they probably feel great about the linebacker room. The edge rusher room is fucking awesome. So the one thing that you're missing here is like a potential impact defensive tackle. So I think you see Teair Tart get released, and it's like, I need that guy, and this is our missing link. And I think that this has the real potential to just change the way that they play defense because of his talent. So again, you have to get him locked in. You have to get him bought in. You have to get him up to speed quickly. But this can change the defensive line's season. I really believe his talent is that high and his upside is that high. But it is a risk. Like if Mike Vrabel can't get him locked in, Mike McDaniel has been very player friendly, and D'Amico Ryan's same kind of thing. These are three great coaches who have had a tough time coaching Teair Tart. So there's risk here. But if it hits, man, this guy has a ton of talent here.
Right. And not everything has worked out for the Chargers, even so far. Fulton's worked. It seems like Dobbins will work. Leatherwood, not so much. But you keep making the attempt. You keep trying. NSN points out Ortiz jumps when you need him to. And I love that. Gun to my head, could not tell you all the players that they have hosted, tried out, worked out, and then also signed just this last month. I mean, Ortiz is literally out there every day grinding to find the next guy. And as soon as he becomes available, I got that guy. I mean, he's just on it. So I love so far him living up to his word that he's going to continue to churn this roster. And it's not going to stop. It's August 15th. I'm sure September 10th, they'll sign another player right before or right after the game or whatever.
Yeah.
It's impressive. I don't know how many of these will work, but I love what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's so refreshing. We've never really seen this, and that's, there's always been some, response to injury signings. That's a thing for every team.
Sure.
Right? But to be proactive here, go sign somebody who can be a potential fullback option for them and Tucker Fisk, and go sign a quarterback because the quarterback room is not super great right now. Go sign a defensive tackle. So it's Joe Ortiz is very true to his word, just as Jim Harbaugh is, and it's very exciting. Roster cut day can be very, very interesting for them on several fronts, which we can get into here. But I do think they will be active in trying to, like Dan Majing just points out, I think they will be active in trying to poach some cuts, play some waiver claims, and be active that week as they kind of, switch gears from training camp to the actual regular season. Yeah,
I mean, when guys like, if JT Woods makes the roster, let's say, that still might be temporary. Once they see all the cuts that happen, it's like, oh, another better special teams guy. I mean, they almost, it sounds like, went after Raheem Lane. Like they almost brought back special teams ace Raheem Lane. Like they are keeping their eye on another safety out there to add to this roster. It doesn't seem like Tony Jefferson is, really involved right now. He's working off to the side right now, which is not great when you literally he has to be out there to make the roster. And even then, you and I aren't projecting him to make the roster. But it's interesting that they were keeping an eye on a safety that could play special teams, which maybe JT Woods could not. Jalen Mills, another defensive back, absolutely. I think that even if JT Woods makes it initially, that is temporary.
Yeah. So I think that definitely is something that the team is looking at, because JT Woods, as you tweeted out, not a reliable special teams player. You don't really know what you're getting out of Tony Jefferson. Like if you're talking about a fourth safety who's like looked the best, played good on special teams, that's probably Thomas Harper. They just released Jalen Phillips today in response to the Teair Tart move. So this fourth safety spot, I think, is very much up for grabs. Maybe they bring in Jalen Mills for a visit. Maybe they do something else. Maybe somebody gets cut. But I feel like the fourth safety is to be determined. I don't feel great about that spot being set in stone. So we can get into some of that as well. But the offensive line, there was some shuffling this week. Alex Leatherwood, we talked about, post game, 6 pressures, one of the lowest pass blocking efficiency ratings in the preseason. Tyler Chase, I think, is underselling that. The film was it was a train wreck. It was somehow worse than I thought it was. There were timing issues, strike issues, get off the ball issues, double team issues, run blocking issues. It was rough. It was one of the rougher games of a starter preseason caliber offensive tackle that I've watched in some time. So he's not going to be starting the preseason. He's not going to be playing with the second team. He has been swapped out for Tyler McClellan. Foster Sarell has moved to left tackle. McClellan will take over at right tackle. And Alex Leatherwood is now working with the third team offense. I still think that they should play him at guard, but that's, I guess, not happening either.
Yeah, definitely a surprise they have not tried that more so. I guess maybe they think, dude, just figure out one thing you can do, and then we'll see if you can do other things. But good for Foster Sarell. I know we're going to talk about, I think, him later. But good for him for finding, working with flexibility, still hanging around. Now he's going to make the team. It seems so good for him. Maybe it is temporary, but he's going to at least win out over Alex Leatherwood, who's a former first-round pick that I think we all kind of projected they would beat him out. So the fact that he's holding on, awesome. Leatherwood, yeah, the worst pass blocking efficiency. It's one game, but the worst of the preseason. When you're the only player in the 80s for PBE, that's bad. And I think his true pass set PBE was like 72.
Oh my gosh.
Which is not like, I didn't know that it could exist. And we've seen some doozies. We've seen that Storm Norton week 18 game. We've seen Senio Kelemete. Give me this. Compared to Senio Kelemete's Denver performance, how was Alex Leatherwood's preseason performance? Where are we at in that level?
Senio Kelemete did that in a must-win game, so I'm still weighing that worse. But I think, individual performance, Leatherwood's was probably worse because he was also playing against a lot of backups as well. So Boye Mafe cooked him off across the line a couple of times. And Essence says we do not speak his name. Yeah, we do not. It was rough, man. I think heading into the off season, I was optimistic about this ecosystem, maybe not bringing him back to being like a starting caliber player, but this guy was a first round pick. He was somebody who was highly touted. I think his Alabama team won the Joe Moore Award for best offensive line. Even if I kind of had a second round grade on him, he still was like a top 50 player for me. I figured this regime, maybe this was me buying too much into the coaching aspect of things. Maybe he was just too far gone. But I kind of thought that they would be able to get the most out of him and rescue his career a bit, make him a reliable backup kind of player. And unfortunately, that just, has not happened so far.
Are you surprised there was such a quick demotion after one game?
No, because it truly was that bad. It was it was rough. Willis Patrick has barely played in the second team offense. He's barely gotten any snaps. Willis Patrick was the better player of the group. And we liked Willis Patrick a bit here, but it was rough, man. It was bad.
Willis Patrick's my guy. I mean, Jalen Phillips was cut. I got one more guy I loved. Hang in there, buddy.
Yeah, hang in there. So I think it's good news. And before, I guess we can kind of transition here right away to the Foster Sarell thing. I think the guard tape from Foster was a pleasant surprise to me. And I think the tackle tape outside of a couple reps here and there was fine. So this is a guy who I think they trust to. I don't think he would be their first choice to replace a starting tackle, but I think they're comfortable with where he's at for an offensive lineman number 9, if that makes sense.
Totally.
I think he doesn't make a ton of technique mistakes, which is really good to see. He's just gets overmatched from a power standpoint sometimes. So I was pleasantly surprised from Foster's tape at guard. I thought he had some good moments working next to Joe Alt from a run blocking standpoint. He had a couple of good reps against whoever the Seahawks defensive lineman with the long hair was. I think that was Mike Morris. So I do think upon further review, I think Foster deserves a little bit of a shout out here.
That's impressive. I mean, I don't recall him working at guard at all until the week they decided they had to play guard.
They didn't really have any other choices, so they were like, "Oh,
no."
Foster."
So Jamari's not practicing still?
No.
So is he, especially with McFadden being your fullback 1, is Sarell basically now your Jamari swing lineman outside of center?
I think him and McFadden are kind of vying for that next spot. But I mean, McFadden can't play tackle, but I think their order of backups, because Greg Roman has kind of talked about, they just want the best 5 out there. I think their order of backups is Jamari, Hymus, and then after that, it's kind of up for grabs. Like I think, Sarell and Jordan McFadden are both kind of in that same position.
Jamari with no return in sight. Like, are we talking a makes the roster and then short-term IR kind of guy?
I have no idea where Jamari's at from a health perspective.
Oh, because he's working through something. Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I think they trust Sarell, enough to potentially be ahead of McFadden right now. I don't know, because McFadden was like, he did play first in front of Foster Sarell at guard, but then he got injured and they kept Foster at guard when McFadden came back. So I think they're kind of in a battle right now for that, 7-8 spot.
Interesting.
Yep. All righty. Before we get to the rest of our preseason preview, of course, have to tell you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks. If you're watching this, you see their logo on the screen. We've talked a ton about them over the last year. It's been a great partnership for us. It is the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. Again, we are, I think, 24 days away from the start of the regular season. We're exactly 3 weeks away from that Chiefs-Ravens opening night game. So make sure you are locked and loaded, ready to go for the regular season. The Prize Picks has a great selection of preseason choices that you can make. You simply have to choose enough players and go more or less than on their specific numbers. And it's a great way to, get some skin in the game. We all love watching NFL regular season games. Make sure and take advantage of the moment with Prize Picks. You can prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout. All right, Tyler, in terms of other film takeaways, did you have any other players that stood out to you that you wanted, or specific things that you wanted to get to that maybe kind of surprised you a bit from watching the tape back?
Yeah, I'll get to overall takeaways in a bit. The one takeaway, just individual player, I do want to say that Joe Alt is way too big and way too fast, and I can't believe like that. It's one thing to see it in college, but to see him do it on film is a whole other thing. In Chargers powder blue, he moves. It's incredible. Like, we forget that I don't think we forget, but Sean Slater, not the tallest, biggest guy, not necessarily. Joe Alt moves like a guard sometimes, and it's wild. Like, he is as advertised. Definitely in the run game when all things catch up and he's like NFL ready and seasoned. It's going to be nasty. So that was fun to watch. As far as basically the entire rest of the offense that I watched, I did not watch the second half. I'll say that much, but I did watch the Easton Stick stuff. And we can all, I think, agree that the play calling was basic, vanilla, not going to show much. I think they've said as much. We feel as much. We sort of saw as much. Fine. We can all agree on that. My question is, if that's the case, why did it look so difficult? Why was it so difficult for the offensive line, for the receivers, for Easton Stick? Nothing was working well together. And that's your basic stuff, apparently. It did not look clean. There were linemen, Brendan Hymus, he's just going that way. He's not blocking his guy. Easton Stick's not seeing the field. The receivers are way too bunched up together. I can't tell if that's intentional or if they're doing the wrong thing, but it looks difficult. The basic concepts right now looked difficult. And that's not all Easton Stick. He's not telling everyone, how they should block. He's not working with the offensive linemen to help them with blocks and communication. Well, maybe he is. I don't know. The receivers, all that, Greg Roman, what he's calling, it just looked complicated. So, not to sound like a total Easton Stick apologist, because I'm not. We just did a video about trade targets. But it wasn't all on him, because everything outside of Joe Alt was a struggle. And that was a surprise.
Yeah, the third down play calling specifically was an issue. There was one third down that I sent in our group message where, they're running kind of a deep over, they were in trips right, DJ Chark left. So the trips right was a deep over, a dig route, and then a go route. And then DJ Chark came across the formation on like a short, shallow crosser route. Well, then Jarrett Patterson comes out of the formation, out of the backfield, and he runs right next to DJ Chark, and they're running this exact same route. And it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, I want to say. And Easton Stick tries to throw it to DJ Chark. Well, because Patterson's there, there's 3 defenders there instead of 1. And so it goes incomplete. And stuff like that was happening all over the place. You know, there was a different 3rd down attempt where Easton Stick ended up throwing to Brendan Rice to the left. You know, it was 2 receivers left, 2 receivers right, and 1 tight end, I think. Well, on the right side, Will Dissly and Simi Fehoko ran into each other off the line of scrimmage. And I'm like, okay, yes, it's preseason. Like, yes, stuff is happening about this, but DJ Chark is a starting receiver. Will Dissly is their best tight end. Like, these issues should not be happening with your starters. If they happen with backups, like, I don't really care. Like, if this is, you know, Zach Hines and Isaiah Spiller, I don't really care. But this is starting caliber players, and this kind of stuff should not be happening. Every single 3rd down, the plays were designed either way too far from the sticks or too short of the sticks.
Yep.
So it was an issue. And again, it's preseason week 1. I don't want to put a ton of stock into that, but these are issues that Greg Roman has had his entire career of properly designing and nuancing a passing offense, and it's showing up in the week 1 preseason is not great. It's not. So I think when you're looking at what to look for on Saturday night, you got to stay out of those situations. If this is a thing that you are not really game planning for because Justin Herbert is out, you can't get in those situations. So you got to give all of your quarterbacks easy completions, get some confidence going, and just completely avoid 3rd and longs, because the play calling on 3rd and long situations from Saturday, I did watch the second half. Unfortunately, I didn't have anything else to do, so I was like, why not? The 3rd and long play calling was a disaster. It was not good for any quarterback. And, you know, the quarterbacks get to their top of the drop and they have 3 receivers who are not even looking back at the quarterback. They got 2 other receivers running into each other. It was a mess. It was not fun offense to watch. And outside of the quarterback play,
that was fun.
It was not fun.
Oh, outside of the quarterback play?
Oh, I'm saying like also outside of the quarterback play. Like quarterback play was bad. Offensive scheming was bad.
Yes, correct.
Sorry, I did word that poorly.
No, you're totally fine. I'm like, oh, I guess I should watch Max Duggan in the second half.
Do not.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but even the passing game stuff, I can give a pass to, because it's, you know, that technically isn't Greg Roman's strong suit. Again, it's supposed to be vanilla. Y'all couldn't block and y'all couldn't run either. So now you're getting to 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, and you're throwing 6-yard routes. Again, it's vanilla. I get it. But even just watching the film too, like, it was so apparent that Mike McDonald was dialed in and knew everything Seattle was doing. Communication, I think it was number 27 on several different plays. It's like he knew what was happening. Like, it was so easy for him to diagnose. So again, it's vanilla. It's not everything we're going to see, I think, but I'm going to keep saying that until about 3 more weeks. And then we'll see what we really, you know, have in store, of course, with Justin Herbert. But like, if it better not be what we're in store for in 3 weeks, 24 days, like you said.
Yeah. And even if you're calling vanilla plays, like, you still have things to evaluate. Like, you still need to get these quarterbacks to get the football to the receivers. And if they're running into each other and, you know, not running proper routes, like, that's your job to fix. So, you know, that is definitely a concern. Okay, we can move on here to other things we want to see, you know, just from a player standpoint. I don't know if Junior Colson's going to play. I would be kind of surprised, but I love what I watched from all of these linebackers on tape. I thought Deion Henley, upon review, was fantastic. We talked about him like he flashed in the game. Shane Lee looked really good in his moments. Nick Neiman had a solid game outside of the 1 tackle. So I want to see, again, if that's going to continue. You know, if this linebacker room can put Shaq Quarterman on the field and Shaq Quarterman also looks good, then I think that really kind of speaks to where NaVorro Bowman and this group are at from a coaching standpoint. So I want to see, can another linebacker make things interesting, you know, because right now I think we're all just kind of penciling in the 5. Can Shane Lee, you know, make enough of an impact? Can Shaq Quarterman come in here, make enough of an impact? And Jeremiah Baptiste, can he raise his hand a bit here? So I think this linebacker room is so interesting. I think they view internally as a real strong suit of the roster. Let's see that taken up a notch this week against the Rams.
Yeah, they were all over the place, of course, in the blitz packages and whatnot. I think they had 18 different blitzes from the linebackers alone. So they'll be very involved on game day, regardless of who's out there with Jesse Minter. Glad to hear Deion Henley played well. It seemed like he did. So I'm glad to see on review that he did. I do wonder. Yeah, I never considered the sixth linebacker spot. And I don't know how where you pull from, especially if you're not keeping six defensive or interior defensive linemen, if they do that. But I mean, I think a reporter asked Jim Harbaugh like who stood out from the game. I think Shane Lee was the first name he mentioned because of the goal line play. And I thought that one thing means you make the roster, but like we've heard a lot of Shane Lee, I feel like, the last couple of weeks. So I don't know if he makes the roster, but he's certainly pushing for that roster spot. At minimum, make the practice squad. NaVorro Bowman, for all the disappointments from even the offensive line and former players working with that offensive line, NaVorro Bowman, as a former player, it seems like has just locked in with this linebacker core.
Yeah.
We were very excited about the hire, but you never really know. You don't know how it's going to translate. I played well, but how do you coach? How do you teach?
Yeah.
And, it helps when you had Junior Colson early on, but that was kind of a gimme. And Denzel Perryman's the veteran. So what can you do with the other guys? And for Henley to be taking a step forward, Troy Dye played well. Obviously, Nick Neiman played well outside of the one play. The other linebackers are playing well. I don't recall watching the game and thinking like, oh, the linebacker play really drops off at this point, like I did with the offensive line or the defensive line.
Yeah.
So they might have something here with NaVorro Bowman. We were excited about him, but to see him get like linebacker 1 through linebacker 8 all lined up and together is great, especially because Jesse Minter, as we've said a million times, he works the defensive back lens. So you need other guys who know what they're talking about when it comes to other stuff maybe you're not as good at. I don't recall in the 2 years or even really the 4 years of both McDonald and Minter with Michigan, I don't recall a lot of great like linebacker play for Michigan. That's never really been the thing for them, at least in those years. Well, if NaVorro Bowman's going to be the guy that helps you in your deficiency, like what a staff.
Yeah, I think, the former player thing is such a good comment because not every player is, that great at communicating what they know. They're students of the game a lot of the time. They don't necessarily know how to teach other people. We also know that former players are not great media members either all the time. Just because you played the game doesn't mean you can communicate what you know at a high level. So if NaVorro Bowman can come in and get this linebacker room locked in, man, I think there's so much potential here, with Deion Henley's athleticism, Junior Colson's athleticism, who had a great first practice, by the way. Broke up a screenplay and registered a sack yesterday, according to Eric Smith. So his first day back had some couple splash plays. So nothing new for our guy. But there's just like we loved Junior Colson. We shouted for joy when they drafted him. So it's a room that I think can just continue to get better and better. We know what Nick Neiman can do on special teams, but if he's a reliable, solid, option for them that can give them some spot starts, like it's just, there's so much depth to this room if everything goes right, so much potential. So I want to see, if somebody else can kind of stamp their flag here. I don't think that will be the case just because roster construction is so tough for this team. But if, Jim Harbaugh, if we're going to keep him to his word, he says that the best players are going to be on the roster. The competitors are going to be on the roster. And if they think Shane Lee deserves to be on this roster, I think they would keep him. But again, we've got to see some more. I think he'll play more this time around because I don't think Deion's going to play a ton. Junior's probably not going to play. So I think we will see a lot of Shane Lee this week, and maybe we'll see some Shaq Quarterman. Can those guys make the roster? We'll find out.
Yeah, potentially. As Marcus points out, yes, Chris Harris, former Pro Bowl great player, does not seem to communicate what he knows very well. So NaVorro Bowman also answers the question of, well, what if Jesse Minter gets hired as a head coach in 1 to 2 years?
Yeah.
I don't know that he would instantly be the defensive coordinator in 1 year, but if he's got these guys playing like that, you make that move. Clearly it works, and the linebackers so far are the green dot guys. So it's possible that is your defensive coordinator and then a future head coach. That's a lot of projection off of a preseason game and an off season.
Yeah.
But you kind of feel it, right?
Yeah.
Like it feels like that's where we might be headed.
Yeah, he's got the temperament too, because I think a lot of, former linebackers, like it's such a raw position, right? Like, but not all of the former linebackers who turn out to be coaches have the kind of, temperament to be even keel, but it sounds like NaVorro Bowman does have that. So like Thomas points out, it could be Steve Klingscale first. It could be Mike Elston has been a very respected coach for a long time. He could be an option. I think they have some good choices there. And Jim Harbaugh, one of the selling points, obviously, of many is that he knows how to build a staff. He knows how to coach a staff, teach a staff, develop a staff. I think they would be fine. Teair asked about Jesse Minter earlier, so I guess we can kind of touch on that because it is kind of related. Where does this Chargers defense have to get to for Jesse to get like head coach consideration next year?
They have to be a top 5 defense, and Mike Macdonald needs to take the Seahawks into the postseason and play pretty well. I think not only do you have to have a really good defense, because like there's a lot of teams will have a good offense or a good defense, but the coordinators don't get hired necessarily.
Yeah,
I think you want to see, if you're another team, that Macdonald, same kind of background, same kind of ish tendencies. If he takes the Seahawks and does well with them, I think you feel a bit better. If the Seahawks are a 7-win team, I don't think anything happens regardless of how good, Minter is this year. Because I also then think people are a bit scared off by the whole Brandon Staley thing. I would be. We were all like, no, first time. Like McDonald, I get it. If you had to go for anyone, it's McDonald. But he was lower on our list because we didn't want a first-time head coach to be a defensive coordinator. And heck, McDonald had 2 years and had coached in the NFL. Brandon Staley was like Rams head coach. So, I think people might get scared off if he's a first year DC, and then a first-time head coach right after that.
Yeah, Mike Macdonald was the defensive coordinator for 3 years in Baltimore, or 2 years? 2 years. And one at Michigan. So he had a bunch of different experience. And I think this is a league that will take chances on young guys. Like not every team that has a coaching hire is going to have the resources to go out and get Mike Vrabel or Bill Belichick in next year's cycle. So there's going to be some guys that end up with, Jonathan Gannon types and Dave Canales types, where you got to get the young guy who's kind of the up and comer. So right. I think top 10 gets him in the conversations for some of these positions.
Sure.
I think if the Chargers make the playoffs, win a playoff game because of the defense, that seals the door for him. That is this guy is going to be a head coach. Whereas if the Chargers defense is 18th, solid, improved, I don't think that's enough. I think it gets maybe the conversation started for him, but I think for him to get a head coaching job next year, it's got to be the team is winning because of the defense. They're a top 10 unit. They're making these splash plays. They're getting development out of these guys like AJ Finley, Christian Fulton, Asante Samuel Jr. You rescue Teair Tart's career, etc. But I think there is a chance that this is a one and done for Jesse Minter. Although I still think that the questions at corner, the questions at defensive tackle do pan out enough where it still is at best a top 15 unit. So we'll see. I'm hoping, obviously, for Jesse Minter's case, that he can go be a head coach and be very successful. As a Chargers fan, I'm hoping Jesse Minter is here for a very long time.
I hope he's just very great, but not perfect enough to stick around for at least a few years. I mean, the way the Chiefs have it, where Spags is not going to take a job anywhere, and they're paying him
such a big advantage.
They're just going to be locked in for as long as they want with the same coordinator who has the scheme front and back and all the right players. Such an advantage for them to have all three. Play caller with Andy Reid, Dave Tube, and then of course Spags there. But I think there's maybe a 1% chance Minter's a head coach this year or next year, excuse me. Not that I don't think he's capable of having a good defense by any means, but that's a huge jump. I mean, there's literally never been, of all the 32 coaching changes at defensive coordinator, there hasn't been one first-year defensive coordinator who's taken his team from as far back as the Chargers were all the way into the top 10. It's only veteran head coaches that have done that.
Yeah. Good point by Thomas as well. If Khalil Mack is a defensive player of the year candidate, if Derwin James is a defensive player of the year candidate, Joey Bosa obviously rescuing his career, like that helps as well. But I do tend to think that, you know, it's a tough ask for him to get really like top 10 defense out of this specific unit. So I think I'm buying into it being, you know, a good, you know, solid, reliable defense, you know, maybe 18th, 17th, but top 10, I think, is still a bit of a stretch because there's a lot of good defenses out there. All right, Tyler, what's one other thing, and then we'll head out of here, but one other key thing you're looking for on Saturday night?
We've covered a bit of it. So I guess the closing thing, and I think what Chargers fans are really looking for the most is the punt returner. No, it's to me, it's going to be
Jalen Gill, baby.
Jalen Gill, who was awesome, by the way. Like, I'm
so
looking
good.
forward to it. He was great. It's Luis Perez, and whether he can do something with the increased number of snaps that he's going to have, supposedly. Boy, the discourse in our YouTube comments was certainly interesting. I saw not one, but two mentions of comparisons of him to Kurt Warner, which technically, if you're rooting for that outcome, means that Herbert has to miss time. So let's not root for that outcome. But yes, I've seen some interesting comments about Luis Perez, and I think you or Alex posted, who should start in week 2. And I think 90% of the people said Luis Perez. Like, all right, let's, because we're numbers guys and we like our numbers, and half of us have done research in fields. Let's get that sample size. Let's get that up a little bit, because I don't think the 12 dropbacks or whatever it was that he had are enough to definitively say that he's like, oh my gosh, he's so much better. But with another game, I think you can feel a bit better about saying, where he really is. Has he taken a step forward? Does he complete different passes to different routes and different receivers? Can he sustain a drive down the field and score a touchdown? Can they get more than 3 points? So let's see how he holds up. I'm curious how he holds up. That truly is the number one storyline, because it's the most intriguing. This guy, I think, can and has the potential to be that quarterback too. I don't know how fast he can do it, but let's see if he takes a step forward.
Yeah, I think from a positive storyline, like, this has the chance to be the biggest swing of the preseason. If Luis Perez can, give them some reliable quarterback play once he learns the offense, like it could change how players are evaluated in this preseason. Like, the preseason certainly doesn't carry as much weight as it used to, but Jalen Gill, Jalen Johnson, these guys are fighting for roster spots, right? And they could potentially make some big plays with Luis Perez as their quarterback. Does that happen? Obviously, the offensive line has to hold up. The route concepts have to be run the right way. But Luis Perez has, I think, enough arm talent to, function in an NFL offense once he, can pick it up a bit here. So I think, him against the second string, third string Rams defense, I don't know how much I'm going to take away from it. But, this is a chance for him to really, earn a chance in the NFL and stick in the NFL. I know he probably likes playing in the spring, but I'm sure he would like to, stick in the NFL. No pun intended there. So we'll see what happens with Mr. Luis Perez.
Yep. Anything else you're looking forward to?
No. Last thing for me, the safety room. AJ Finley, I think, has wrapped up safety 3. He was fantastic. Against the Seahawks, really set the tone early. JT Woods, I thought, showed some signs, like he came up and tackled a couple more times than we're used to seeing. So can that carry over? The other thing that Daniel Popper pointed out is Dean Leonard and Matt Hankins were taking some reps at safety this week. So they're trying to get some more versatile defensive backs out there. Do we see that in a game? And can one of those guys maybe gain an edge over Mr. JT Woods because they can play corner and safety? I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing that might pop up this week, especially after they cut Jalen Phillips, unfortunately for this show.
Thanks for closing out with that one. Wow, Dean Leonard at safety. I don't recall what he played at prior to Ole Miss, or if he played any safety at Ole Miss, but interesting, because he has all the physical tools that JT Woods has, but he'll come downhill and tackle. He literally does that on special teams. Yeah. So no worries there. He's clearly can cover. He's gotten so much better at that. it's so funny that Dean Leonard, even as CB3, is also a more intriguing option at safety than JT Woods is. And I'd buy it. Like if he is better, I'd buy it.
It's so sad. Thomas did pointing out correctly that JT did play outside cornerback this week in practice as well. So it's going around, which is why I think Jalen Mills, who has played full seasons at outside corner, slot, and safety on 3 different occasions, could come in and be a great pickup for them. But I think this defensive back room, I want that like final spot kind of figured out, because I think, you have the 3 safeties, you have the cornerbacks that I feel like are set in stone. Can Matt Hankins make a push? JT Woods, can he cement his status? That to me is one of the more defensive heavy storylines to close out the preseason.
Yeah, I would love to see JT Woods or whoever the 4 safety is, at least give us some confidence. We have 2 more games, but it'd be nice to see us feel at least a little better about the 4 safety and play well on special teams, at least.
Yeah, because that 4 safety, he's got to be a special teams players.
Mm-hmm.
So JT Woods, hopefully you can figure it out. Thomas Harper, as Jalen points out, had a great special teams tackle. He's had some interceptions in training camp. I loved his slot film, so he's kind of a guy I am hoping stands out this week as well. Mm-hmm. And then Tremont Morris-Brash, just working with the first team defense this week. Again, some of that is health related, but he has really come on strong over the last couple of weeks. He played good last week. I wouldn't say he was like awesome, but he did have some good moments. Does this momentum keep building, and does this turn into a 5 pressure 2 sack game? Like, is he somebody who really shines bright in this game? That is definitely worth paying attention to, because Chris Rumpf is injured and going to miss time, according to Jim Harbaugh. So this is again, fighting for a roster spot. Best players are going to play. Get on the roster. Tremont Morris-Brash has looked the part against the second team offense, does that carry over to the rest of the preseason? I think is another one of the positive storylines to watch. Yeah,
Chris Rumpf apparently missing time, according to Jim Harbaugh, is like DEFCON 1 for injuries. Like that is almost the worst thing you could hear from Jim Harbaugh, who will literally only say that people are working through something. To say that he will miss some time is like, oh, okay, he's might not make this he's not making this roster if he's not playing.
Yeah, I think they could theoretically like keep him on the initial roster and IR him, because if you put him on IR before roster cuts, his season is over. So we'll see what happens there. But Tremont Morris-Brash, let's see what you got. All right, Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out?
No, man. We'll see you guys Saturday night. Last time we got 9,000 something views on a 3-16 loss in the preseason. I don't anticipate that happening again, both the score and the viewings, but I appreciate it sincerely. Thank you guys for being there during the show, after the show, liking, commenting, all the stuff. Whether you're saying Luis Perez is Kurt Warner or you're talking about the offensive line or whatever, we appreciate it. So see you guys there.
Yeah, 100%. It's always great to interact with you guys in the chat live or on YouTube comments afterwards. Audio audience as well, doing your thing. So we appreciate you guys out there as well. Make sure subscribe, comment, review. All that stuff really does continue to help grow the show as we head into the 2024 season. 3 weeks away after Saturday night's game. So cannot wait for regular season football. We are right around the corner. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. We will see you next time. As always, bolt up.